Welcome everyone to Learning with Rev. Today we're going to be learning about data types in Python. In Python there are many data types, but today we are just going to be focusing on 6 introductory data types. These are string, integer, float, list, tuple, and dictionary. If you've ever programmed in any other language before, you've probably heard of all of these, except possibly tuple, which is specific for Python. In other languages, a list is sometimes called an array. So to begin, we're going to start off with a string. A string is anything within quotation marks. So in this case, we could say hello, and it returns hello. If we set our variable a equal to hello, and then we can print out a, and if we ask for the type of a, we will get the type of that variable, and it is a string. Let's say we have a number, 23. If we set b equal to 23, and we take the type of 23, we're going to get an integer, but we want it to be a string. How can we do that? Well, one way we could do it is we could put it in quotation marks, and we get a string, or we can cast it to a string. So casting is when you use the keyword for that data type, and it will become that data type. So 23 on the inside of the string, where it says str, is going to be an integer, but we've cast it to a string, and then we've returned the type, and it tells us it's a string. You do have to be partially careful with one character in Python. That is going to be the escape character, which is a forward slash. So if we print, let's say hello newbies, for all you new people out there, it will print hello newbies. However, if we use the forward slash, we're going to get a different answer. We're going to get hello boobies. That's because slash in front of an n is an escape character, and it means new line. So you do have to be careful about that. There'll be specific cases where you'll need forward slash. If we do want to print a forward slash, we can just print type one right in front of it, and we'll get one out. Another escape character case is /t. It creates a tab. There are other ones, but those are the most common ones that I use on a regular basis. So I'm going to clear this out just for now, and that was a good introductory for a string. We did mention integers. Integers is any number that doesn't have a decimal place. So you can take the type of -1, integer, the type of 3219, integer. Let's say we have a number, 200, which is a string. We can check that by doing the type of a, it's a string. Just like before, we can cast it to an int. So we can say int a, and we can wrap that in type. And now it's an integer. Let's say we want a decimal, 4.5. Set a equal to 4.5. Now what is this? It's not an integer. You might think it's a decimal number, but in programming, we have a number for it. It's called float. So a float is any number with a decimal point after it. You can convert integers to floats. So let's say b is equal to 4. We could take the type of b, or we could take the type of float of b. You get that? We can even just see what happens. You get 4.0. However, a is 4.5, we cannot take the integer. It's gonna chop off that 0.5. So unless you don't care about that specificity, you should try not to wrap your floats in an int. Unless you know they're going to be a whole number, you could do a check for that, and then you can make sure that it is a whole, just has a 0 after it, and then you can cast it to an integer. So that's our 3, I call them single data types. There's always just one of them. They exist by themselves. And the next one we have is a list. I call a list, and you create a list with brackets. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4. You can say the type of a list. And it's a list. So what's special about a list? 1, they are iterable. You can go through them, you can count through them and get numbers out. They are immutable, which means you can add items to them, you can delete items to them. So for example, we can say what is the first item in a list? So the first item in Python, we count from 0, is 1. We can say what's the second item? It's 2. Also, this is called indexing this way. Python, we can also count from the end of the list. So if you always know you want the last item in a list, say a list, we want the negative first item, and that's 4. So that's going to be the last item in the list. So that's always really handy to have. We can always append a list.append 5. And now we can print out a list again. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There are different ways to remove items from a list. One way is with pop. We can say a list.pop. It removes the last item. And now, if we type out a list, we get 1, 2, 3, and 4. And not only can you use pop to remove the last item of a list, but you can remove an item by its index. So we can see a list here is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's say we want to remove the second item of a list. We can pop 1, which is 0, 1, 2, and 3. So that will actually be number 2, which is the second item in the list, and 1, 3, and 4. So I'm going to reset our list here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Just so you can see, it is right there. And you can do the same thing. You can use a negative index also. Another thing we can do is you can remove a specific item. We can a list.remove 4. And 1, 2, 3, and 5 are still there. So those are the best ways to remove an item from a list. There are other ways using slicing or other methods in Python, but those are the most common ways to remove items from a list. I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to do one more thing here. Not only can you have integers, you can have lists within lists, you can have floats, you can have strings, and you can mix them all together. You can have 1, you can have 53.7, and we can have hello, all in this list. And that's okay. We can also iterate through the list with a for loop. We go for I in a list, print I. And as you can see there, it prints out 1, 53.7, and then hello. So lists are great in Python, a great way to store a lot of information in one place, and very easily accessible. Now, very similar to lists is a tuple. It looks similar to a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. However, you use parentheses instead of brackets. We take the type of T, we get a tuple. We can index, just like we can, but we can never add anything to it. A tuple is not mutable. Once you create it, it cannot be changed. So tuples are great if you have some data that you know never needs to be changed. You need to access the same list of data over and over, and you don't want it to accidentally get changed ever in the future. So that's a great thing for tuples. Tuples are also iterable. So for I in T, print I. We could print 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 right there. I would say tuples are super common. Most things you could just use a list for, and if you're doing any projects for yourself, you know what you're going to be writing, so you don't always need that security that it won't get overwritten in any way. So we're going to clear that out, and we are going to work on our last data type. It's a dictionary. You make dictionaries with these squiggly brackets. In a dictionary, you have different pieces. The first part is the key, so we're going to call this key 1, and it's given a value. So key 1 has a value of 12, and then we're going to say key 2, its value is going to be 24, and key 3, it's going to have a value of 48.0. And if we find the type of D, it's a dictionary. So what makes a dictionary different? So here we have key value pairs. So instead of like a list where we can just grab the first element, in a dictionary, if we try to do that, it's going to give us an error. There's nothing with a 0 as a key in a dictionary. However, if we say key 1, we're going to return 12. So that's one great way to do it. It's when you have key value pairs, two numbers that always relate together. You can refer to one by the other. That way you don't have to deal with two different lists. Strings don't have to be the keys. You can use integers for that also. Pretty much anything can be that key. So you don't have to worry about that in this case. It's just easier to refer to things by key 1, 2, and 3. We can loop through it. We can say for I in D, print I. So what do you think is going to happen here? Is it going to print the key, the value, or both? In this case, it's going to print the key. So what we're going to have to do here is we're going to say for I in D dot values, print I. And that's where we get our solution. That's where we get the values to print out. So whenever you have this key value pair, you can iterate through it, and you can have certain, you can refer to the key or the value. And these data types are not all independent. You can have a dictionary within a list within a dictionary. Doesn't really matter. The great thing about Python, a lot of these things are interchangeable. It's also great, this can also be worrisome, is as you see before, I can easily overwrite something. Let's say D right now is this dictionary, say D equals 32, and now D is equal to 32. So you do have to be careful of this in Python. You don't want to overwrite any of your variables. However, it's very useful, especially for prototyping and testing and teaching, that you have everything that can be overwritten real easily. So those are our 6 data types. We have our string. We're going to call this string right here. Well, I'll clear it for the review. is going to be a word or anything inside quotation marks. Boom, that's going to be our string right there. We have the integer, and that's going to be any whole number, positive, negative, 0. We're going to have our float, and that's going to be anything with a decimal place. Our list, brackets, you can iterate through it, you can change it, add stuff to it, remove it. We have our tuples, kind of like lists where you can iterate through it and access items within it, but those items cannot be removed. And finally, we have our dictionary. You have key value pairs within this dictionary, and that is how they are all linked together. So thank you all for watching today. Hope you learned something about Python. Hope you learned a lot about these introductory data types. In the future, I will be making another video about some of the more complex data types. Thank you all for watching. Please subscribe, and I hope you learned something.